Today we are going to discuss pie charts. The information is given in the form of two pie charts. First of all, let us have a look at the question and simultaneously we will be discussing the main points. The pie charts below show the average household expenditures in Japan and Malaysia in the year 2012. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Students, whenever you are forming your introduction, some blueprints will really help you. What is given? Pie charts. About what? Household expenses. Where? Japan and Malaysia. Which year? 2012. If you can see under the pie charts, there are 5 different categories or segments in which expenses are there. This is the introduction. Now let us discuss what are the highlighting points. First of all, I'll be talking about Japan. In Japan, the highest expense we can clearly see was on other goods and services. If we talk about healthcare, then in Japan, the healthcare expense was only 6%. Talking about the second segment in which the expenditure was done in Japan was on food, 24%, and thirdly on housing. Now if we talk about the second pie chart, that is of the country Malaysia, the highest expense, that is in light green color. What was the category? The category is housing, 34%. And if we talk about food, the expenditure was 27% and thirdly on other goods and services. So this was the individual description of the two pie charts, but whenever you are given information in this way, what you need to do, pick one segment and include as much as data as you can. Now what I mean is, if we talk about the highest expense in Japan, that was on other goods and services, but highest expense in Malaysia was on healthcare. So therefore students, healthcare was the major segment in which the expenditure was maximum. What I mean is, housing was the major expense in Malaysia, whereas other goods and services was the major expense in Japan. Talking about food, almost similar percentages, and overall what we can say is, healthcare was the segment in which the expenses were least in the two countries. Now since we are given with only 5 segments, the answer to this question is very easy to form. What you need to write: highest, lowest, what was the least in two countries, and in case there is any similarity. Now students, pause the video, note down your answer, and then we'll be discussing one possible answer. I hope that you have written your answer. So let's begin with the discussion. The pie charts show the amount of money spent on different household expenditures in Malaysia and Japan in 2012. What is given? Pie chart. About what? Amount of money spent on different household expenditures. Where? Malaysia and Japan. Which year? 2012. Whenever you are writing the introduction to your answer, if there is such connect, then your introduction is okay. Now let us start to put the information. It is clearly revealed that the highest proportion of expenditure in Malaysia was on housing and food, constituting 34% and 27% respectively. But in Japan, the proportion of these two were 21% and 24%. Now students, I used a line. Pick up the segment and try to put as much as information you can. This is what I meant. First of all, I have begun passage like this. It is clearly revealed. What is revealed? The highest proportion of expenditure in Malaysia was on food as well as housing. I have taken together two segments, means the highest expense and the second highest. What was that? I have mentioned, and then I have told that in Japan, the proportion of these two were so and so. Altogether, the two segments of two countries are revealed in this line. Let's read further. In Japan, the highest expense was other goods and services, 29%, while it was 26% in Malaysia. Now, first of all, I have talked about the highest expenses in Malaysia and compared with Japan. Now, in the second half, what I am doing is, I have taken Japan, its highest expense, and compared with Malaysia. What was the highest expense in Japan? That was other goods and services. and I have mentioned the percentage 29% and compared with Malaysia, that while it was 26% in Malaysia. Now in this passage there are two ways of writing the statistics. Either you can write this percent and this percent, or if you read the last line, I have mentioned 29% in bracket along with the category other goods and services. You can also write this way. So students, here altogether 3 segments are covered of both the countries. We are left with only 2 more. Another major expense in Japan was transport at 20%, but this was much lower in Malaysia, 10%. So now I have discussed about the transport expense. In Japan it was at 20% and in Malaysia 10%. On the other hand, both countries had very less overall percentage of expenditure on healthcare. This was the 5th category, and this was the category in which the expenditure in the two countries in 2012 was least. What was the category or segment, I would say? That was healthcare, that I have mentioned at last. Now we have covered all the categories, we have compared the categories, we have revealed the statistics. Now comes the conclusion. In the nutshell, the data clearly indicates that food, housing, and other goods and services constituted higher expenses in Japan than transport and housing took up a main proportion of total expenditure in Malaysia. Now students, in conclusion, we generally tell what was overall scenario. And most importantly, when you start a conclusion, you can use these connecting words in the nutshell. Pause the video and note down this word. So in conclusion, I have told that in the two countries, what were the segments that constituted higher expenses. So in Japan, it was food, housing and other goods and services, whereas transport and housing were the major expenses in Malaysia. So when you want to tell that so and so constituted something else, or so and so clubbed together, joined together, or these were the things together, many of you, I would say 90 to 95% students are aware of the word constituted, but still make a separate place for writing down the vocabulary. Make a habit of writing down the words there. Some words that sound very beautiful, but if you already even know the meaning of those words, but still write down. Why I am saying so? When you are going to appear for your final exam, means IELTS exam is there, and you are revising the vocabulary, it will be a very nice collection that you will be having in your hand to put in your speaking and writing. So therefore, whenever I say write down, note down, make different categories like connecting words or vocabulary words, or whatever I tell you, the important lines that you can use commonly in different questions, just keep a note of all those. I'll meet you in the next session with a new topic. I hope that you are enjoying the journey with me. See you in the next class.